Happy Friday night, everybody. Thanks for being with me tonight. Sorry I'm a little late. If you were tuning in at 6:30 Mountain, which I know many of you were because I got emails, I'm way late for you. I meant to come on at 8:30, but because of travel issues, I'm home right now, getting from Boise to Idaho Falls. I'm glad to be with you, home with the family. I haven't been home in 2 weeks. It's so nice to be here. I'm like driving around the neighborhood, like remembering if I know the way around. But it's good to be with you. And what a day in court. A very emotional day as Tammy Daybell's sister Samantha took the stand and her husband Jason. And we also heard from a deputy coroner, and we heard from the forensic FBI lady, it's not forensic, it's a tactical specialist. The James and Elena story, the love story. There's so much to talk about. I hope we can get to it all tonight. If we can't, I'll be back Sunday. We'll talk about it. This is Courtroom Insider, by the way. I'm Nate Eaton, breaking down the Chad Daybell murder trial, going into week 6 next week, if you can believe it. Thinking about it, a year ago today, the Friday before Mother's Day, we had a verdict by now. I was coming to you live from a hotel room in Boise. Dateline was getting ready to air a 2-hour special about the verdict, and the trial was over for Lori. But we're not anywhere near done for Chad. I think this is going to be 3 or 4 more weeks, and I'll be there every step of the way covering it for you. Here's what we've got tonight. A simple situation. Quoting Chad Daybell for you. Was this a simple situation that was simply misunderstood? That's what Chad Daybell said on a phone call that I'll play for you a little bit later. A phone call that we had not heard publicly before today. We're going to talk about what the deputy coroner saw when she showed up at Chad Daybell's house the morning that Tammy Daybell died. Also, that call that I just mentioned, the never before heard call to Chad. Jason Gillum was meeting with the cops, and he said, you know what, why don't I call him? He's my brother-in-law. We'll see what he has to say. And they said, you would? And he said, yeah. Will you record it for me? The police said, sure. So they recorded it, and we heard it. And I've got it, and we'll play it for you. We also have the dark sister. I put that in quotes because Samantha is anything but dark. If you've met her, you know she radiates light. But Chad thought she was dark. Well, she took the stand today. They saw him for the first time in person since Tammy Daybell's funeral in 2019. And the pet cemetery, we revisited that today. They showed photos. They wanted to be sure that everyone knew exactly where it was on the property. And the Gillums had been there multiple times. They had visited. They had, spent time with Chad. So they knew, and they told the jury where it was. We will talk a little bit about Chad and Lori planning for their wedding long before their spouses were dead. The romance novel, I mentioned it to you a minute ago. We barely got into it. That's going to be a fun topic first thing Monday morning. And remembering JJ, Tylee, and Tammy. Especially today. I've been thinking a lot about Tammy as her family was there at the courthouse. The witnesses today, as I just mentioned, want to be sure you caught them. We had Deputy Coroner Cammie Wilmore. She was Deputy Coroner at the time in Fremont County, Idaho. She no longer is. Jason Gillum, though, brother-in-law of Tammy. And not just the brother-in-law, Jason and Chad were close, very close. I mean, this is a couple that they lived by each other most of their adult lives until Chad and Tammy moved to Idaho. At one point, they lived across the street from each other. When one would move, the other would move. They'd move around the corner from each other. They went to the same LDS ward. Their kids were together all the time. They saw each other 4 or 5 times a week. Jason shared a shop with Chad several times. They talked all the time. They were close, very close. So it was more than a brother-in-law testifying. This was like a friend, a really good friend. His wife, Samantha, also testified. She's Tammy's sister. And then we had the FBI specialist, Nicole Heidemann. She was on again. You might remember her name. She testified on April 15th. Here we are a month later. She brought more receipts. She brought more evidence. And we'll talk a little bit about what she had to say and what we can expect come Monday. Okay, first things, though, let's talk about the coroner. This is Cammie Wilmore. She was fairly new-ish in her position. She said that before she responded to Tammy Daybell's home on October 19th of 2019, she had only been to 5 or 6 other unattended deaths. So she hadn't had a lot of experience with them, but she had been to some. She showed up. She testified that Chad was distraught. He was crying. He was upset. She asked how Tammy died. He said the same story that he told others, that she woke up coughing, she threw up, she went to bed, she somehow got tangled in the sheets. He was awakened to her falling off the bed early in the morning. He called 911. She noticed, though, that her body was quite stiff and cold and that she had been dead for some time. And her duty, her job was to basically keep everything under control until her boss, the coroner, Brenda Dye, got there. And Brenda Dye has testified before. We heard what she had to say. Here is something a little unusual, though, that Miss Wilmore, the deputy coroner, noticed when she arrived at the house and saw Tammy.
Did any of your initial observations cause you pause?
Yes. The very first, when I walked in, she had this foaming that was coming out of her mouth. That was probably the very first thing that I was surprised at. It wasn't something that I hadn't really seen before. I've seen foaming little bits, but this was kind of like a foam cone that was coming out of her mouth. So I was surprised by that.
And did you actually end up doing anything in relation to that?
I didn't at the time. I knew that the coroner was coming, and so I didn't really want to do anything with the body till she got there.
The coroner arrived, took a towel that was on the floor, and wiped the pink foam away from Tammy's mouth. The foam then came back up. So Wilmore was curious. She'd never seen this pink foam, and she pulled out her phone and she Googled, can pink foam be formed when someone's poisoned? She never really found anything like that, an answer to that yes, it was poison. There were natural remedies in the house. A few of them. There was a book by Tammy's bed about how to heal yourself naturally using homeopathic type things, essential oils, things like that. But there wasn't like any drugs around the house. There wasn't any. She was on drugs for her depression, and she was on drugs for her wrist. She had hurt her wrist. But other than that, everything was fine. She did discover or learned later that when someone has been asphyxiated, that pink foam can come up through the mouth because it's, creating liquids, that need to be excreted. She also noticed some bruises, and not a lot, a couple, she said, on the arms, on the upper body. And she realized that, but she didn't think anything of it because they looked older. And she made it clear to say that the coroner does not determine the age of bruises. That would be up for the medical examiner. And remember, the other day, the medical examiner testified when he looked at Tammy's body. He was able to cut portions of those bruises, put them under a microscope, and there was hemorrhaging, meaning it was a fresh bruise. It was not an older bruise. So that's what she had to say. And she didn't declare the cause of death or anything. That would have been her boss, Brenda Dye. But she did talk about to her, Chad seemed like a grieving husband, at least when she first arrived, and then Brenda Dye took over. But there was that pink foam, and Chad did not want an autopsy. He told them he did not want to do an autopsy. Next, it was Samantha Gillum. And I want to say that to preface this, for the first time, two of her brothers, Ben and Matthew, came up. And they were sitting on the front row of the bench right behind the prosecutor. And they haven't been to any of the court proceedings. They didn't speak, but they were touched. I don't know if touched is the word. They were quite emotional during moments. At one point after Samantha finished testifying, Ben, the younger brother, just put his head down and was crying, just crying for several minutes. And the older brother had his hand on his back. At one point, the older brother was crying. And they were handing each other tissues. And there were the four of them sitting right in front of me. You can maybe see it in the video. The two brothers, Samantha, so three of the five. Tammy's gone, and then the other brother didn't come. And then Jason. And Ron wasn't able to make it, Tammy's dad, but I hear that, he has been watching every development. And of course, Phyllis passed away last year. But this is, I mentioned earlier how close they were. I mean, here's a photo of them taken years ago at some function, probably a wedding. They're having a dinner there or something. And there's Tammy with Chad and Samantha and Jason. And then here's another one of them, having a dinner or a meal together. They saw each other all the time. I mean, they were best friends. This is a family that did so much together. And confided everything and just really were close, super close. And they testified that since this whole event, like Chad's children won't talk to them. They tried to make contact and there hasn't been any contact. And I'm sure that's just been so heartbreaking for them, to not contact them, to not have any, interaction with them after they've been so close for so many years. But Jason talked about how close they were. And then he was asked about, did Chad and Tammy ever talk about, maybe having a rough marriage or issues in their marriage? And did Chad ever talk about his near-death experiences? I want you to listen to this clip. And on the other side, we'll talk about how the story that Chad was telling originally, that Jason testified of, kind of morphed over the years, kind of became a little bit more extravagant, I guess you could say, became a little bit more, embellished. But here's just a little exchange that Jason had.
Was there anything specific in your discussions with Chad that he explained if he had concerns about his relationship with Tammy?
Just in the fact that I think he felt like at times it was a little vanilla. It was a little bland.
What did he say about that?
Just in certain aspects of the relationship, that it was just a marriage of just, we have a lot of routine, just general routine that we go through.
Did you and Chad share the same religious views, generally speaking?
Generally speaking, while he was in Utah, yes, we did.
Had Chad ever confided in you or shared with you any experiences that he may have had in La Jolla, California?
He did.
Can you explain La Jolla? Yes. Can you explain to the jury what did he tell you about that experience?
Said he had an experience that was a little life-changing in the fact that he was in the ocean. Large wave came in, a lot of rocks, smashed him against the rocks, chewed up his back pretty good. And it was one of those moments that you just don't forget.
And did he also share with you an experience that he had in Flaming Gorge, Utah?
Yes, he did.
Judge, I'm going to object at this point. This is becoming leading.
Overruled. Yes, he did.
Thank you. What was that experience?
Another experience in his youth where he was jumping off cliffs, and as he hit the water, he felt that his spirit separated from his body and become torn from his body.
Is that something that he'd explained to you originally?
He had talked to me about that.
Judge, could we get some foundation as to time, date?
Sure. Can you let the jury know, when did these conversations occur? What year? Approximately?
Conversations occurred early 2000s when we would have conversations about that.
And we'll get to it later, but was there a later time that you also discussed these?
We did discuss these later, yes.
But in the early 2000s is what you're saying as to these two conversations, is
Yes.
that right? Was there anything specific in your discussions, we'll get to it later, but was there a later time that you also discussed these?
We did discuss these later, yes.
But in the early 2000s is what you're saying as to these two conversations, is
Yes.
that right?
Okay, sorry if that re-racked it, re-looped. Jason talked about that, again, as I mentioned before the clip, that later on, the stories turned into the fact that when he had these experiences, he could part the veil, meaning the I don't know, a veil, a curtain, whatever that separates this life from heaven, that he would be able to part it, open it, and see into the next life. And those were part of his spiritual gifts. The teachings got a little bit more and more bizarre, a little more and more out there. Jason wasn't sure what to think at first. And then Chad really started to push that they needed to move to Idaho, even after Tammy and Chad moved up here. It was a big surprise to the whole family when Chad said, we're moving to Idaho. And they didn't have anything in Idaho. Springville was their family, their life. Tammy had a job. The book publishing company was in Idaho. Really, the thing that they had in Idaho was that the beliefs that Chad was espousing, that it was going to be a gathering place for the end of the world, and there were going to be these tent cities. And you remember when Heather Daybell testified that she did not want them to go to Rexburg. She's like, this is our place. This is our place. Don't come here. Okay, you're coming. All right, we'll move somewhere else in town. There's all these places. There's Idaho Falls. There's Rigby. There's St. Anthony. There's all of these other places. Don't come to Rexburg. Where do they end up? Half a mile down the street. Same ward, same neighbor, same everything. So the family in Utah is wondering why in the world are they moving. The family in Idaho is wondering why in the world are they moving. They move here. Tammy gets the job, and Chad keeps running his publishing company. While he is encouraging the family, Jason's family, to move with him. Here is a little bit of how that played out.
I was informed that there would be earthquakes, that there would be destruction in America. I was informed that there would be invading troops that would come from various different countries into the Americas.
Did those views that he shared with you, did they cause you any concern?
Sure.
In what way?
Well, it's a fear tactic.
What do you mean by
Judge,
that?
I'm going to object. Calls for speculation.
You may continue.
In my opinion, it's a fear tactic. It's a way to let people know I know more than you, and therefore you should listen to me.
Why did you perceive it that way?
I perceived it that way because when you bring up anything on a natural disaster, it has a tendency to create fear. When you bring in wars and rumors of wars, it creates fear.
Eventually, I think you said Chad and his family moved to Idaho.
Yes,
And what year was that again?
2015.
At the time that he moved, had he invited you to move with him?
He had.
Can you explain to the jury how that request went and why he was asking you to come?
Towards the end of 2015, he expressed his desire for my wife and I and family to move up to Idaho so that we could be in proximity with our families, with each other.
Did he say any more about that?
He felt that it would be good for us to move up there in order to escape the earthquakes and the desolation and the things that would happen in Utah.
What was he telling you about what it would be like in Rexburg?
He said that Rexburg would be a city of light, place of refuge, place that people would want to come to and be at.
And what was your reaction when he asked you to come up?
My curiosity at first was piqued because I wanted to know. I don't want to be in the middle of a giant earthquake. So naturally, I thought, okay, this is something that might be of interest.
Did you take stock in any of his visions? Did you believe any of those things?
Originally, yes, I did.
At that time, were you still embracing maybe some of what he was teaching?
During that time frame, yes.
So why did you eventually not move up to Idaho?
Didn't feel it was right.
Any specific reason why?
There were things that were going on that to me, it didn't feel right. We had opportunity to visit. Idaho's a beautiful place and a great place for some. It just, for us, wasn't going to be a place that we needed to be at.
Did you tell Chad no, you weren't going to move?
We did.
Did he ever ask you to come up again?
He did.
How often would he ask?
Are you looking specifics or generality?
Well, generality first, then we'll go to specifics.
Generality, just whenever we could. And we did go visit. We had opportunity to go attend family functions and events up there.
Did he ever ask again for you and your family to move to Idaho?
There was a letter that was written to me
When was that letter written?
in 2016.
And that was a letter from who?
That was from Chad.
What did he say in that letter?
In that letter, he essentially told me that we needed to be in Idaho.
Did he say why he believed that?
He said we needed to be in Idaho because within the next 3 years, there would be a giant earthquake, that Springville and my house would be shaken to the ground and destroyed, and that we needed to escape that destruction before that happened.
Did he claim that to be part of his visions?
Yes.
Did he say anything about concerns he might have had with your wife?
He did.
What did he say?
He'd informed me that she was allowed to go south and that the spirits, in particular the dark spirits, would allow her to go south to do whatever she wanted to do, but she was not able to come to Idaho to see the glory and the visions that would happen, and that she more or less was being held back.
What did you take that to mean?
I took that to mean that She was being controlled by dark spirits.
How'd you react to him telling you that or
I wasn't-
expressing that? Sorry.
I wasn't thrilled
Why not?
because I have a responsibility and a stewardship over my family. That's not Chad's responsibility.
Okay, imagine you get a letter from your brother-in-law telling you need to move 6 hours north, 7 hours north, and your wife is dark. Send her south. She's not good enough to come up to us in Rexburg. Yeah, I'm sure that's exactly how Jason felt. Pretty upset. Jason's a very nice guy, and I mean he doesn't want to cause problems for anybody, but he testified that no, we're not moving. We're not coming up there. And over the years, as happens with families, as kids get older and whatnot, and you live further apart, they saw Chad and Tammy not as much. Holidays, family gatherings in the summer. Chad and Tammy would go and stay at their house in Springville when they'd visit, or the Gillums would come up to Rexburg and stay with them. And as time went on, 2018-ish, 2019-ish, around the times when things really started to change, there was an author who Chad was working with, who Jason really was not fond of. And he didn't say it, but I think I know who it is. We all might know who it is. He was not fond of the work that was coming out. And then he recalled a time where Tammy, Chad, Samantha, and Jason were all sitting in a hot tub. I believe this was spring of 2019. And Chad was quiet. Remember, Chad met Lori in the fall of 2018. So the following spring, the spouses are still alive. The affair has clearly been going on. They're sitting in this hot tub, and Chad is like non-responsive, just sitting there. Jason said it was really weird. He didn't say anything to Chad, but he said something to Samantha after, like, something's up with Chad. A couple of weeks, 2 weeks before Tammy died. Well, actually, let me back up. Before that following summer, so that was in the spring. In the summer, Jason and Samantha get a knock on their door one night. It's late, a couple of days before Samantha's birthday, and Tammy's at the door at 10:30 with a present for her. Samantha said that was very odd because Tammy went to bed early. She was always the early one to bed. 9 o'clock was late for her, but here it was 10:30, and Chad sat in the running van the entire time and didn't come up to the door. It was weird. It had never been like that. There was another event where all the family came except Chad. He said he had to work. And then 2 weeks before Tammy dies, she takes a trip by herself, which she never did. She didn't like to drive alone. Took a trip all by herself, showed up in Springville, got together with Samantha and her parents, and Samantha testified they did like an adult talent show because Tammy had just been doing her clogging, so she clogged, and then Samantha was in a theater type of, I forget what she said, some sort of action type of training or whatever, so she did that for her parents. They just had a good time. I think that at the time too, they were making puppets for Samantha's play, or they were working on these puppets, and because she's the theater teacher, and then they just had a really great weekend. Tammy was healthy. Tammy did not complain about being sick. Tammy wasn't out of breath after she clogged. Tammy had not gained any weight. She had not lost any weight. She complained about her wrist hurting. And we heard about that earlier in the trial, that she tripped when she was leaving the pet cemetery area one day. I think she was feeding the chickens and she tripped and hurt her wrist. But that was about it. And then 2 weeks later, she's gone. Jason got the call from Samantha, and Jason was stunned. Couldn't believe it. He was out running errands. He went home immediately. It was Saturday morning. He started to get things in motion to plan for the funeral. He got in the car with another man, Steve Schultz, I believe, who testified earlier, the funeral director. They drove up to Rexburg to collect the body. And Chad was not very emotional. He told Jason, "I'm all cried out," which was a little off, but he didn't think much of it. On the way home, Tammy died on a Saturday. The funeral was Tuesday. It was a big rush, of course. The viewing happens Monday night. The funeral happens the next day. They go out after the funeral. They go out to the cemetery for the gravesite service. Jason said that Chad said the family prayer, which is where the family gets together before the funeral or there at the gravesite, depending on how the family does it. And someone will say like a family prayer, like a final prayer with the person's body present, I guess you could say. And Chad was very rocking back and forth. He said it was a very unusual type of prayer, especially for Chad. Here's the thing though that sticks out. They go to the gravesite, which normally in traditional LDS tradition, I guess you could say, those gravesite services are not too long. And then everyone went back to the church where a luncheon was being held. And they get to the church and they're waiting for Chad. And waiting and waiting and waiting. And finally Jason calls Chad and says, "Where are you?" And he said, "Just start without me." He was 45 minutes late to the luncheon. And then he gathered his kids and they went home to Rexburg. Didn't socialize, didn't chat, didn't visit, didn't do any of that. And Samantha was hoping to talk with him. He said, "We have to get home. We have another memorial tomorrow." So already there's some questions about what's happening here. And a couple of weeks go by. The family was wondering why in the world she was getting buried in Springville when her kids and husband lived in Rexburg and they'd moved to Rexburg. And then they find out that Chad's married. And Jason calls and talks to him and he says, "Yeah, I'm married. Don't tell anyone." And he says, "She's 120 pounds. She's 5'5" or whatever. She's blonde. She's skinny, whatever he said. He's bragging about his new wife to the brother-in-law who's married to the wife's sister. And finally, there was a bunch of questions here and there, and the cops contact them around December 18th, I believe. And so Tammy's been gone about 2 months. And they say, "We want to talk to you." And he said, "Fine, I'll talk to you." Jason said, "I'll come on down." They went to the Springville Police Department. This is when he first learned about JJ and Tylee. They had had a couple of conversations with Chad in the meantime, asking about Lori Ryan, the name that Chad gave to them. Then it was Vallow, and he said she's had a complicated past. They asked if she had kids. Yeah, she had adult kids. They were all grown up. So the police say, "We're trying to get a hold of Chad. We're trying to get a hold of Chad and Lori. They're not answering their phone." Jason says, "How about I call them?" They said, You'll do that? He goes, "Yeah, I'll call them. You guys record it." He wanted to record it because Jason said at that point he was doing anything he could to help the police find those missing kids. Here is, I don't know if I'll play the whole call. It's about 11 minutes. It's kind of hard to hear Jason. I'm sorry because they played it through the court system, so the sound's not the best. If you have an earphones, you might hear it a little bit better, or you might want to turn up the volume. But here is how that call played out. There's some interesting things that Chad said. And Lori, too.
They're wanting to talk to us.
What?
Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm like, I don't know if I want to talk to you guys. And yeah, I have people wanting to question and talk to me about you and what you got going on. And I'm like, okay, why? And so I thought I need to reach out and find out.
Speaker Lori's here, so let me just put that speaker.
Okay, sure.
So go ahead and state what is happening so she can hear.
I have people calling me from Rexburg saying, "We want to bring you in for questioning and talk to you about what's been going on, and we're trying to find some kids. And what do you know about it?" And I'm going, "I don't know anything. What? Why? What? Okay, no, I don't know what's going on." And so,
Yesterday, they actually went to Leah's house and tried to threaten her. We're not fully sure what they're trying to accomplish. It's mainly one detective in Rexburg.
Okay.
So finally, we got a hold of an attorney, and that's pretty much where it goes from here. It's just,
Just everything to your attorney and stuff. Okay.
yeah, just, we can text you his name and
Yeah, probably should.
Mr. William, I'm going to pause there. You just heard yourself in the audio saying you probably should contact an attorney. Did I get that correct?
On that one, they had mentioned, or he had mentioned to me that they had an attorney they retained. And I wanted to get the name of the attorney so that I could then pass it on to law enforcement. And that was the purpose of that.
Okay. And the voices that we've heard so far, we've heard your voice. Just for clarity, who's the other voice?
The other voice is Chad Daybell.
say who you need to.
You know me, I don't deal with a lot of this stuff very well. I'm just like, okay, I'm a simple dude. What's going on? What do you guys want to do? What's happening? What's going on?
Go your route. I don't know how you would even be involved.
I have no idea. They're just trying to go through and just kind of see if I know anything about anything going on. And I'm like, no, why would I? Talk to me. Tell me what's going on. Well, we're trying to find two kids that along with Lori, and we just want to know if they're being, sheltered down in Utah. And I'm like, what? I don't have any idea what you're talking about. So is there kids that are not involved, or what are they talking about? So I'll have a clue if they show up at my house.
If they show up, you can just give them the attorney's name and say, we're not talking to you without an attorney.
Okay.
Because
No,
there,
well,
it's my sister-in-law. It's just a bunch of people that are starting trouble for no reason.
It's separate from the Tammy situation.
well,
Mr. William, you just heard that reference to the Tammy situation. What did you take that to mean from Chad when he said that?
When he said the Tammy situation, I can only, the fact that he had buried her soon, married Lori as quickly as he did. I don't know that it would be a situation, and I don't know what he means by situation at that point.
Would it be fair to say at that point in time that you didn't have any knowledge of any investigation related to Tammy?
I didn't know of anything.
And had Chad ever discussed anything like that with you in any of the prior phone calls?
Let me backtrack slightly. Possibly the Tammy situation could be in reference to him calling previously to ask about her exhumation.
They're trying to combine it all together.
well, do you want to send me that attorney's number? Do you want to text it to me, or?
Yeah,
Yeah, if you can do that, that would be helpful, I'm sure.
they're just grasping at straws. I still feel Heather Daybell's behind it.
Okay.
She's an evil woman, and
It's her in-law that's this
yeah,
officer.
Detective Hope.
Yeah, did he call?
Just to inquire, at that point in time, had Heather Daybell contacted you about any of this?
At that point in time, I don't know that Heather and I had conversation about that. I can't recall.
You?
No,
Was it
he didn't call me. It was another individual. And so, yeah, that's where I'm like, okay, this is getting a little bit weird here. And so I thought I'd reach out to you to find out, what's going on. And so. Anyway.
We pretty much blocked them. It's a simple situation, but we just can't tell you because then you'd have to be involved.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
I get it. That's fine. So at that point, they're talking about bringing down like a host of like FBI people involved and stuff.
You just heard Chad describe the situation as a simple situation.
Correct.
And he said, I can't tell you because I don't want to get you involved.
That was what was stated.
And you said, okay, I understand. What did you mean by that comment?
At that point, I felt that it possibly was a smaller situation. I didn't know what the situation was. And so at that stage, I think he was just trying to keep me out of the loop.
And I'm like, I don't want, I don't need that. It's Christmas. So, that's where I'm just going, all right, that's interesting. So. Okay.
Well, you don't know anything, which
Yeah.
is great.
Yeah.
You don't know anything.
No, I don't know anything, and so that's good news at that point in time, so, okay.
I don't know how I would have done that other than Heather. She knows our friendship.
Oh, sure. No, of course. And so, yeah. And that's why I was like, yeah, maybe I better get a heads up about what they might have to say or what's gonna happen or what they're talking about doing. And so if you've got that name on that, I'll just say, hey, look, you know what, you may just want to go talk to these people. I don't need to, you know, be involved in the whole thing. So,
I'll text you the attorney's name. He's a calm, collected individual. We're happy with him, but
gotcha. So
It's-
on that, it just,
We get everybody that we know, it's just so dumb.
so on that, is this an attorney that's just, is he out where you're at? Is he local? How would I, if I needed to?
he's in Rexburg.
He's a Rexburg attorney? Okay,
Yeah.
I gotcha. So,
Yeah.
okay.
So,
It's Rexburg police who are being whatever.
yeah, they've
It's
gone,
Heather's in-law
right.
is this detective that's bugging everybody, so.
Gotcha. They seem to think that there's stuff that's being hidden and that they're wanting to try to get to the bottom of what's being hidden. And I'm like, if you know, I don't know what your guys are talking about. It kind of catches you off guard when you have them call you up and start chatting with you. And you're going, okay, I don't know anything about this stuff here. And so, yeah,
This is a different issue that doesn't involve any Douglases.
Okay. well, with that being the case, that's fine. I just thought
We're
of,
sorry that you're being bothered.
no,
We're
it's
sorry
fine.
you're being bothered.
I think they're just trying to,
Just to be clear, Mr. William, who are the Douglases that are being referenced?
That would be in reference to my wife's family. We all lived within a close proximity to each other.
Is Douglas your wife and Tammy's maiden name?
Yes, it is.
just go down every possible route and road that they can, I suppose. And so,
And so if they happen to bother Ron and Phyllis or anybody, just the same attorney.
Same attorney.
Okay.
Yeah.
well, if you'll get me that information, that would be helpful with regards to that. So. that
Yeah,
way-
text it to.
Bartholic, Sean Bartholic.
Yeah, it's a
is his
weird name.
What, Sean what?
Bartholic.
Oh, Bartholic. Okay. Barth. Yeah, that is a little different.
Same name, but
Yeah, that works out just fine. So,
this detective is Matt and Heather's daughter's father-in-law.
oh, okay, so there's a relation to
Oh,
Heather with regards to
Paid
everything.
off or what? He is
We don't
just
know if
so
he's getting
persistent.
paid off or what, but he's bugging everybody we know for
It's
no reason.
basically a
And he won't even
custody
call us. He doesn't call us ever to ask us any questions. He's just trying to get information from anybody else that will give him information.
Sweet. So should I tell him to call you and you'll give him the information so they'll leave me alone?
Yes.
All right. Maybe I'll do that. If they say come over, I'll say, hey, you got their number, call them. You know, and so
It's like he's circling us rather than talking directly.
so he's
Exactly.
basically taking every angle possible and trying to come in and chat with you guys rather than just saying, hey, pick up the phone and call you and you'll chat with him. Nice.
I changed this number.
What's
And
that?
Garth gave him my number 3 weeks
They've
ago.
had the numbers.
Oh, no kidding. Well,
And just won't call me.
I'll just tell him, pick up the phone and call the guy. Hello, it's not that hard, you know, reach out and touch someone. So
Probably just start with the attorney's
I'll
number.
just say
at this
here, you
point.
know what, go talk to Mark or whatever you are at. And so, anyway,
Yeah.
so,
You can say that. You can say that, we've been instructed by our family attorney to not speak to any police, and here's his number. You can contact him. And that he can cover the whole entire family.
okay.
Jason, at that point, from your perspective, did you see any need not to talk to police?
I did not see a need for them not to communicate with the police.
Did you personally have any concerns if the police were going to interact with you about this issue?
No.
We heard the name Ron and Phyllis. Who is that?
Ron and Phyllis are Chad and I's in-laws.
No, that's fine. So, you guys,
By our family attorney. This is his name, so here you go.
well, no, that's fine. That's what I'll do at that point.
Just to all your family.
And then I'll just turn around and say, by the way, if you want to just pick up the phone and call him, why don't you? So,
Right.
anyway, that's,
That's what I told him.
oh, did he? Oh, so are the kids, what are their plans for Christmas then? Are they just gonna be
Okay, I'll stop it there. You can go on and listen to the rest of it if you want. A couple of things. One, for Lori to say they won't call us. They're calling everyone but us. That is a lie. Lori and Chad refuse to talk to the police. And once you hire an attorney, and once you tell the police you have an attorney, the police have to go through the attorney. So that was a lie. Dave Hope was not paid off to investigate. I mean, there's so many claims in that call. Think about being in Jason's shoes too. You want to be friendly to your brother-in-law. You want to get as much information as you can. You don't want to tip off that you're there with the police. But you also want to push a little bit. I'm sure Jason, I'm sure, was frustrated at that point and wanted as many answers, especially when you've got 2 missing kids and they've been fed a bunch of lies over the past few months. You probably want to jump down their throat, but you want to be as helpful as you can to the police. So, you know, I thought he did a good job trying to get as many details as he could. Another interesting fact that came out of the testimony was when Chad told Jason at one point that his kids are, quote, really good at keeping secrets. That was kind of eyebrow raising. And I don't know if, you know, at the time the Gillums thought much about it, but that was another part of his testimony. So after John Pryor did get up, he did have some cross for him. He talked about the letter that Jason talked about, how Chad sent him the letter, the move to Idaho. Just followed up with a couple of other things. The interesting thing is, remember how Chad called this a simple situation. After Rocky Wixom got back up on recross, he said, or on redirect, he said, was 2 kids being buried in Chad Daybell's backyard a simple situation? And Jason said, absolutely not. So after Jason, Tammy's sister Samantha took the stand. And she, you know, as I mentioned, was best friends with Tammy. She talked about their friendship. They were always so close. Talked every day, texted every day. And here is a little bit about what she said at the beginning of her testimony.
And how old was Tammy?
49, the same age that I am right now.
Did Tammy end up talking to you during her visit about you moving to Idaho?
She did. She wanted me to move up
Judge, I'm
there.
going to object to calls for hearsay.
Sustained.
And Your Honor, if I may.
Just ask another question, please, Ms. Blake.
Did Tammy appear to be making plans for the future?
Yes, she did. She wanted me to move.
Judge, I'm going to object to calls for hearsay.
Overruled.
She wanted me to apply for a theater teaching job in Idaho so that I could be close by her. We had always made plans to live by each other as we got older. And when she moved away, we were still trying to figure out ways to make that happen. That was our joke, that we would be old ladies together, living side by side.
You can hear the pain in her voice. My wife's close with her sisters too. I think they talk. She's in here every day, text every day. And I can just see the 3 of them growing old, living side by side, complaining about the wrong price charged at the grocery store. No, just kidding. But really, Samantha and Tammy had that type of relationship, and I'm sure it was heartbreaking for both of them to be ripped apart. First of all, when they moved in 2015, but then also to be ripped apart because of this death. Samantha was asked if Tammy mentioned ever that there was any sign of an affair. Was there any sign of an affair? She said no. Any indication? Did Tammy ever mention it? No, there wasn't. She asked Chad finally after Tammy died, and of course she was crushed to find out that her sister died and that the funeral was rushed. And she asked Chad right away, early on, are you going to do an autopsy? And this is what Chad responded.
And how old was Tammy?
49.
Did you ever talk to Chad about an autopsy?
Yes, I did.
What did he tell you?
I asked him in a phone call that we had after she passed away and we were making funeral arrangements. I asked him, are you going to do an autopsy? And he said, no. And I said, why not? We don't know the reason why she died. And he said that the coroner had told him that she looked
Judge,
peaceful.
I'm going to object at this point. It becomes hearsay at this point.
Sustained.
Your Honor, these are the defendant's statements.
Okay, I will revisit that ruling and overrule the objection based on that. Thank you, Ms. Blake.
You can continue. What did Chad say?
Chad said that the coroner told him that she looked peaceful and that and it looked like natural causes. So they said they weren't going to. He also stipulated that it would be a cost of $1,500 for him to do so, and it would hold things up. And they wanted to get the funeral done quickly.
Do you recall when the funeral was?
Tuesday,
And she passed away on a Saturday?
correct.
Did that seem fast?
Yeah,
And where was Tammy buried?
in Springville, Utah.
Did that surprise you?
Yes, it did.
And why was that?
Because she resided in Rexburg with Chad and her children. And I asked Chad in that same phone call, why are you burying her in Springville when you all live in Rexburg? And he told me, we are covered with snow and ice for most of the year, and you will take good care of her.
Was there anything that struck you as odd about Tammy's headstone?
Yes, he requested that his name not be on it. I found that odd for somebody that was heavily into family history to not do so.
Judge, I'm going to object. This calls for it's a narrative, excuse me.
I can ask a question.
Go ahead.
Why was that odd to you?
Because he was heavily involved in family history, and we look for headstones to find information about our ancestors. And to leave that off would mean that someone further down the line could not connect him to her.
Do you recall hosting a luncheon or a dinner the day before her funeral?
Yes, we were hosting a luncheon before the viewing so that we could feed them when they came down from Idaho.
And when you say feed them, who are you referring
Just
to?
referring to Chad and his kids.
Did they show up?
No,
Did you attend Tammy's viewing?
yes, I did.
Do you recall speaking with Chad after the viewing or at the viewing?
Briefly,
Did he tell you anything in relation to Tammy's passing?
yeah, he said that he had information that he wanted to tell me about Tammy's last week and how she'd felt like that her body was separated from herself, and he wanted to give me more information so that I would have comfort about her passing.
Did he tell you anything about having a vision that Tammy's mission was going to be complete?
Yes, he did.
Did he also indicate to you, but the vision was that she wasn't going to die?
That was what I took from the conversation.
And you said, or let me back up, did you attend Tammy's funeral?
Yes,
Did Chad indicate anything about wanting to talk to you after the funeral?
that is what we thought was going to happen.
Did you in fact talk to Chad after the funeral?
No.
Why not?
He made himself unavailable.
At some point, did you learn Chad was remarried?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall how you learned that?
My husband, Jason, told me that he had talked with
Judge, I'm
Chad
going to
on the
object at this
phone.
point.
Sustained.
Move to strike.
And I will strike that response.
Do you recall reaching out to Chad about a month after Tammy's passing?
Yes,
And did Jason also reach out to Chad?
yes.
At some point, did Chad tell you his new wife's name?
Lori Ryan.
Did he indicate anything to you in relation to Lori Ryan having a previous spouse?
Yes, he said that her previous husband had died of a heart attack. And that was why they connected. He told me that they both had lost a spouse and that was why they met up and had their marriage.
And you learned about the marriage approximately a month after your sister had passed away?
Correct.
At some point, did you learn when Chad had actually gotten married?
Yes, I did. It
And when was that?
was November 5th, 2 weeks after she was buried.
At some point, did you learn of another name associated with Lori Ryan?
I did.
And what was that name?
Vallow.
And did you learn of some other names associated with Lori Vallow?
That there were children, JJ and Tylee.
At some point, did you talk to Chad or have a conversation with him about that?
Yes, I did.
And what did he tell you?
I asked him in a phone call, please tell me about this woman that you've replaced my sister with. And I asked him questions about her name because what we found out was different than what he told us. And he said, well, she had a complicated past and was trying to move on from it. And that's why they had told us the name that they had.
Judge, could we have some foundation as to when this phone call supposedly took place?
It took place December 13th.
And was that of 2019?
Correct.
Did you know where Chad was at that time?
I think he was in Hawaii.
At that same time, do you recall Chad telling you something about Tammy visiting him?
Yes,
What did he tell you?
because I was questioning him about this marriage. He asserted to me in this very, spiritual-like tone that, Samantha, I am telling you now that when I was at the cemetery, Tammy showed herself to me and said that I should move on. And I responded with, when most women say that to their husband, it's in 2 years from now, not 2 weeks after I'm dead.
Okay, I played that longer clip because there was so much in there. If you did not listen to Samantha's testimony today and Jason's, I think these were key moments in this trial. The jury was locked in. And I noticed when Samantha left the stand and walked to her seat, several jurors followed her and watched her go sit with her brothers who were crying. And they watched this family. I mean, it was, I got choked up seeing these two brothers in front of me, just one with his head in his hand sobbing. I will say there was a great moment with I don't know if you caught it, when Pryor objected to, he said, Judge, can we have this some foundation of when this happened? Samantha immediately shot back to him. It was December 13th. Judge didn't even rule. Judge Boyce kind of got a little smile on his face. Prosecutor kept going. John Pryor even kind of smiled like, oh, okay. Samantha was in control of her testimony. So Erica's here and she's, come on in here, honey.
Hey, I gotta tell you. I just snuck in.
We're in the basement and so Erica did not listen to the testimony today. She just heard Samantha for the first time. You've met them. What did you think about, did you catch the encounter with Chad telling her that Tammy appeared to him and said that I moved on, you need to move on too?
No, I didn't. But tell me.
She said, he told Samantha that your sister appeared to me and told me I need to move on. And Samantha responded, when women say that, they usually mean about 2 years, not 2 weeks.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would probably come back and haunt you if you did that to me.
Probably. What did you think of the rest of her testimony that you heard?
I said it on our Meet in the Eatons channel.
Erica goes on and chats on there.
I do when I come on, which is not frequent, but I do pop on occasionally. Just the fact that Samantha has had to do this. This is the second time she's had to come in and testify.
Right.
Did she testify? I feel like,
She
yes,
did at
I was there
Lori's.
that day.
Right.
And she, I mean, I got emotional when she was talking about her sister at Lori's trial, but to hear just that snippet, I was sitting over here in the room. Samantha, if you're watching by chance, I'm just really proud of you, because that would take a lot to be able to go through this process, to still be grieving for your sister, and to get justice for her life, and to be able to ask those tough questions. I think a lot of times when you're drowning in grief and you want answers, you can kind of like be defeated and give up. And she just kept pushing for answers until they got them. And we're here today, which I found you're a warrior.
Well, not only that too, you might, a lot of people might have these thoughts, but oh no, he's a nice brother-in-law. He'd never do that. But and you might not express them. And she did. Why aren't you getting an autopsy? Well, it'll cost me $1,500. And then Samantha did her own little research and found out who Lori Ryan really was. Lori Vallow, and the husband was shot and killed, but they said he had a heart attack and no kids. And then these kids are missing. She had done all of this research.
And I think that is a key part of this, is that testimony really does solidify all of this for you and put it together, that there was a lot of deceit and lies going on, and you don't need to lie about things if you're telling, if you have nothing to hide.
And for her to testify right after Jason, they kind of set the foundation with Jason having this close relationship with Chad and trying to recruit him to move up. And then finding out Tammy's dead, and then finding out the lies, and then the recording, and then you get Samantha up there. Just, yeah. Any other takeaways?
I don't think so today.
Yeah.
I think that they're really starting to tie things up, like there's been a lot of testimony that has been just setting the foundation for this testimony today, would you say? Like a lot of data, facts, but now we're getting into this is what really happened. This is how it's affecting people's lives. I think they're starting to tug on the heartstrings a little more than they have been previously in the past few weeks.
Yeah, and they've kind of mixed it up. In fact, somebody told me today, this person has been to the trial every day, I think, almost every day. And she didn't know much about this before. She knew a little bit about the case, but she really was like, I'm going to go to the courthouse and I'm going to follow this and see what develops and be as open-minded as I can. And she told me today in the afternoon break, so about an hour left, she goes, okay, I think my mind's made up. I won't tell you which way her mind was made up. You can probably assume, but she said after today, she's like, the questions I had answered, and she still has some. She still has some, that is there going to be that smoking gun? Is there going to be that, what happened that night in Tammy's bedroom? Will we ever know every detail? She still has those, but she kind of sees clearer now. And the prosecution hasn't rested. There's still more witnesses.
And you don't know. There could be 5, there could be 30.
We're up to I think we got to 60 today. 60 witnesses, which is more than Lori Vallow's case, but also Lori's case was done by this time last year. I'll look at my little witness list here. And they recalled a witness this afternoon. I don't know if we'll have time to talk about that one tonight, but maybe we'll talk about that on Sunday night. This is the romance novel. The James and Elena.
I haven't told my children, but I've told other people, this is proof that no matter what you want to do in life, you can do it. If you can find that audience.
Oh, you mean
because to read the quality of the writing, I just think whatever you want to do in life, it's yours if you really believe in yourself and go forth.
Well,
and he must have really believed in himself to be able to do all the things that he has allegedly done.
Right. 60 witnesses. Samantha was number 60. So if the prosecution goes for another week, I predict, this is my prediction, I don't know anything, they rest next week. Maybe a week from today they rest, and then the defense starts the following week.
Can we circle back to this romance thing.
Yes.
I won't get wild with
We'll
you
talk
guys
more
here.
about that on Sunday night. If you haven't read the romance, that can be the homework assignment.
Yeah.
Go to eastidahonews.com.
If you can stomach it.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot to stomach. And there's stuff we kind of learned new today, too.
I guess I shouldn't really go there then. I'm
No, you
gonna
can. Go ahead.
tiptoe in and he can say we'll address
go
it on
ahead.
Sunday. Is that it seemed like at the beginning of the trial, John Pryor is already trying to discredit this by saying he was an author, he writes lots of things,
Right.
he, like just
Takes
because he
creative
texted.
liberties.
Yes. So I have a feeling that that's maybe what happened a little bit. I guess I didn't listen. You guys probably did. I'm sorry. We were busy.
Pryor hasn't crossed yet. So
Okay, well then
Pryor
yes,
hasn't
it's
crossed.
probably
He'll
coming
cross
on Monday. Yeah.
This is on East Idaho News. If you Google the romance novel Chad Daybell wrote to Lori Vallow Daybell, this will come up. This comes from police document. Here's the story contained. So remember, this was a novel that Chad texted Lori, and it gets a little PG-13-ish. Teeters on R. You can read through it. But what they did today is again, James and Elena. James's physical attraction to Elena was almost overwhelming, but he was equally drawn to the spiritual energy. Erica just said, "Stop it." She doesn't want me to read it. And I don't blame her.
Are you going to say the key words? You passed it. You passed.
The loin fire?
Yes.
Oh, yes. I have a clip somewhere of Keith Morrison saying loin fire.
And every year I mean to make it into a ringtone for Nate and change his phone without his knowledge, but I haven't yet.
No.
I've been busy.
There's talk of erotic tension, the body of a goddess. Just read it if you haven't. If you want to. You don't. We'll talk about it. What they did today, though, and we'll talk about this again on Sunday, is they looked at this novel and other books he's written, and they compared to real life events. Like, okay, it said in this that they went to the temple to be sealed. On this date, we had proof that they used their temple pass to go in and be sealed, and they went back and forth. Like they're laying out the stuff written in here for James and Elena or Raphael and Lily, which is what Chad and Lori went by.
How do you keep up with so many names?
I don't know how you keep up with names.
I mean, you're keeping up with it.
Oh, me?
Yeah,
well,
it's a lot.
I mean, I've been doing this 4 years. I don't know how. I hope the jury's keeping up, and I don't know how they could keep everything straight. But that's a whole nother discussion.
Well, I would never murder you.
We don't have any other names for each other.
But if I did, I would just have to say it was self-defense because I can't come up with all these twisty stories. It's too much.
Yeah, please don't kill me. And I don't.
Not planning on it.
Hopefully, I have no reason to do a self-defense.
Yeah.
I guess if you killed
Not
me, these guys could do a Courtroom Insider.
I'm so sorry. That's not going to happen.
It's not happening.
We're fine.
We're thinking about CrimeCon. Okay, we better stop.
Yes.
We have questions. Anything you want to add? You want to stay on for questions? Shout outs?
Stay in for questions, I guess. Shout out
okay, here,
to
I'll let you. Oh,
Jan. Yeah. I said if I come on, I would shout out Jan. Jan saved my life yesterday, helping me out with a teacher lunch, which it was weird to think about because I was in charge of teacher lunch last year for teacher appreciation. Shout out to all the teachers. Thank you for what you do. I could not do your job. I did it last year and we were all watching the verdict come down at the teacher lunch. Oh, wow. So it was weird to be there this year doing it and there's no verdict yet we haven't even gotten to the defense yet. So, I mean, that one hurt a little bit personally because things have been wild this week at home. I don't know how much Nate has said or not said, but we had sick kids and we had to be a lot of places and I'm glad that this week is done.
But last night I mentioned how I needed to mow our lawn when I got home. 20 minutes later, shout out to Tony. Came over, rang the doorbell. Erica opened the door. He goes, "Where's your lawnmower?" He mowed the lawn. Was he in bare feet too?
He was in flip-flops.
Flip-flops.
Yeah.
Don't bag it. I mow in flip-flops all the time.
And then I made him come in our house and check the fridge, which is also broken. I don't know if you caught that one.
No.
There's lots of adventures that go on while Nate's gone out of the house.
Yes. Okay. Shout outs. Nate, please give a shout out to my wife, Amy Daniels. We can rotate. She grew up in Rexburg, mother of 9. Wow. Nurse of 25 years, and it's Nurses Week. She had recent medical things, including surgery, healing, and I sit with her for her date with Nate.
That's nice.
Yeah, Steve Daniels, Stephen, Amy. Thank you. I hope you heal quickly.
Okay, Tracy Everson, who had emergent surgery and still found a way to watch Courtroom Insider in South Africa.
From the hospital?
That's impressive.
Wow. Thank you. Tell Nate the ICU nurses in Florida love him and we watched at 2 a.m. Love Jenny. Well, I hope if I ever do the ICU in Florida, I find your hospital.
That's right. Okay. Tatum?
Tatum.
Is this right? Tatum, I knew Tylee when she was 7.
Oh.
We did a summer music camp together, and Lori was our instructor. Still haunts me to this day. May they all rest in peace. That would be...
Yeah, I heard Lori was quite musical. Okay, Richard Baldwin, Evelyn Lee, Arlie Darlington, Justice 1999. Hi. Jennifer Turner, Shannon M., Sandra Hill, Lisa Duffy, Bookworm, Paula Dune, Marilyn McMurdy.
And Bookworm, I saw you in the chat earlier. I can't remember your comments necessarily, but I know you're faithful because I saw it on there.
We were just talking how we didn't have nicknames.
Oh.
Do you remember this?
Yes.
I can't show it because my phone number's on there. And as much as I love you all, I don't want to put my cell phone on the internet. Years and years ago, when Emmy was like 5, she figured out how to change
the nicknames
in my phone outgoing to Boo Boo Butt. So when police sources were getting calls from me or fire, like Keith Bandit just texted me and he goes, I know you have a nickname, see the screen grab. It would pop up Nate Boo Boo Butt. So one time I called the sheriff in Fremont County with this Daybell case to ask a question and his name pops up, Boo Boo Butt. He's like, Sheriff Humphreys. I'm like, hey, Sheriff, da-da-da-da-da. And he goes, who is this? And I said, it's Nate Eaton. You don't have me in your phone? He goes, it popped up as Boo Boo Butt. We could not figure out how to change the thing. I still don't know how.
We were in the car. I remember when Humphreys called you, and we had a good laugh about it as well. But at some point it changed, right?
I don't know.
Maybe
I don't
still
know.
Boo Boo Butt for
if you have an
summer
Android
reviewing.
and I call you and it says Boo Boo Butt, blame Emmy and Everett, our 2 kids who probably don't know how to change it yet.
Oh.
Okay, here we go. We have some a bunch of questions. I get all these messages and they get mixed up. Henny, thank you so much. Kokomo, Indiana. Henny asks if I know Chad and Lori were using drugs. I don't think there's never been any talk of drug use with them. And when they've searched the cars and the houses, they've never found any drugs that I'm aware of. So I don't know. Lillian Lee, thank you very much. Does Chad, and then Arse over Teacup, does Chad's computer have the pictures on it during the trial? No. Chad has a computer that has evidence on it, so he's able to pull it up. There's a screen in front of John Pryor that has what's being shown, the exhibits. Curious because of his lack of reactions. Yeah, he does not have many reactions really during much of anything.
Oh, sorry. So did he really have no reaction? Brother-in-laws are over there. No emotion?
Not really. Not that I saw it. He may have at one moment. I didn't have a chance to speak with the all of the family after, but I don't think he did. The one day I did see him kind of interacting is when his brother Matt came. Do you want in the chair?
No.
His brother Matt came and he kind of gave him like a thumbs up. They had a moment. Okay, I wanted to share this because yesterday somebody asked about how can his criminal defense attorney really defend them? And I got this email. Tonight on Courtroom Insider, I heard you discuss a viewer's questions about defense lawyers. As an adult child of a criminal defense lawyer, I have been dealing with this question my whole life. How can your dad defend criminals? My late father always had the same answer. Guilt or innocence is irrelevant. Anyone accused of a crime in these United States of America is entitled to certain constitutional protections, including the presumption of innocence and the right to effective counsel. Our system of justice requires that we ensure all defendants are afforded these constitutional protections. As it is, our justice system has serious flaws. There's no doubt that race continues to play a role and unfairly stacks the deck against people of color, and money, or that lack thereof, stacks the deck against those of lesser means. Criminal defense lawyers work to defend the liberty of the falsely accused and the rights of all defendants to be treated justly and fairly. While I'm not a big fan of Pryor's delivery, I applaud his zeal in the defense of his client. It's a tough job, but someone has to do it to afford all of us a fair and effective justice system. The older I get, the more tiresome I find it to have to justify or defend what my late father did for a living. His was a noble profession when performed ethically and with integrity. It certainly was not easy to deal with as a kid attending private schools. I think that you make a great point. She asked that her name not be said for privacy, so Thank you for sending that in. And really, we have to remember that in other countries, look at what's happening in some of these other countries. You have no rights.
Yeah. And I will say, during Lori's trial, I know that those lawyers, obviously, we live in a small community, Idaho Falls, Rexburg, this whole area is more rural. They were getting all sorts of nasty things coming at them, threats, death threats, things like that. How could you defend Lori? And for me, I want the best possible lawyers on there because I don't want a mistrial. Right. I don't want anything to happen. I want them to say she had competent defense.
Right.
And that there's no going back once that verdict comes down.
And Larry Woodcock has told me that exact same thing several times as soon as today, as early as today. He said, I want them to have a defense. I want them to really put it out there. Like, he shakes their hands. He won't, there's a gag order, so Pryor won't talk to anybody, but this time around, but none of them will really. But yeah, I agree. Okay. Mikey?
Sure.
When Lori and Chad fled to Hawaii, does it mean that Chad's kids celebrated the first Christmas their mother had died without Chad as well? Probably. Yeah, we haven't heard much about Christmas. Actually, in that call today, yeah, they did, because Jason asked Chad, I cut it off before it played, about what are the kids doing for Christmas, and he kind of talked about where they were all going. If we assume that Tylee was dismembered, do they have any idea where that happened? We have not heard where the children were actually killed, just where they were located. We didn't hear that in Lori's trial. If we didn't hear it there, I doubt we'll hear it in this one. So I don't know. About Chad's tools. Chad seemed confident about there not being any Ty's DNA. I Googled photos. There was one. He was wearing thick gloves. I wanted to show this to you. From the person who sent this, thank you. I don't have your email, but I don't have your name off the top of my head. But there was this picture of Chad Daybell here we go, when he was a sexton at the funeral home, at the cemetery in Utah. See that? This woman that emailed me right here, there's gloves. He's wearing gloves. She's making the point. They did a story on him in the local newspaper back in 1998. She's making the point that he knew to wear gloves, and that's why his DNA, fingerprints, whatever, was not on the tools. And that's a valid point. And I would think, too, if you were doing such gross, dirty work, you would have gloves on and maybe even like a white hazmat type suit. Okay.
You want me to read that?
This is from Janet, yeah.
I'm sure this must have been covered 1,000 times, but was there ever proof of a wound or skull damage showing that Alex Cox had actually been hit on the back of the head with a baseball bat? I mean, hard enough for him to give him cause to shoot a gun. I mean, if so, that should have been fatal, but he didn't even seem hurt, was he?
No. And Charles was a professional athlete who had played baseball in college. If Charles is going to hit someone with a bat, he's not going to give a little dab of blood on the head. But Alex was in a crash when he was in his teenager years, and I have heard people say that he was never quite the same after that. So I don't know if that's kind of what you're thinking at, like maybe he was a little slower or something, but I have heard that.
I need to read this next one.
Yeah.
Colette, I have followed you forever. On Saturday, I have an appointment to get your face tattooed on my neck. Okay, that's not true, but I do have a question.
Don't do that.
If you do, though, I'd like to see it. I assume it must have taken numerous hours for beautiful Tylee's remains to have been burned to the extent that it was. Given the proximity to neighbors and Chad's family, how did no one notice? Given some of Emma's responses, I'm concerned she knew.
Well, we don't know anything about what Emma knew and didn't know, at least as of yet. She may be asked that on the stand.
Neighbors did comment that he had had a large fire in the fall.
He had a bonfire. This is a rural area. You've seen the maps if you followed the thing. It is not that uncommon. Even where we live in a neighborhood, people down the street will burn their leaves.
They burn the irrigation ditches all the way down.
Right.
I mean, like, that's not a...
Right. It would have taken a long time to burn a body. A very long time. Was it done there at the property? I mean, it was at the fire pit. There was charred remains. So some of it, yeah, maybe all of it. I don't know. I'm just, if you think about it. But also, again, it is a rural area. There was a neighbor that said she walked all around it. No one smelled anything. He did Google the direction of the wind. I mean,
I mean, like in February or January every year, they take all of the Christmas trees from the surrounding area and burn them in a giant bonfire. So I feel like that socially, lots of people have bonfires that would go on for hours.
Right.
So I don't know.
Susan says, has any family other than those called to testify attended the trial of Chad Daybell, such as his children? Do you think his children still believe he's innocent? They have not attended. They will, though, when they're called to testify. And by all accounts, up until this point, they are standing behind their father.
Do you know that they really will testify, though? I guess nobody knows until they're called.
Right. And Pryor said they would in opening statements, at least 2 or 3 of them. If Chad Daybell is found guilty, then they will likely be character witnesses. Is it really 10 o'clock?
Yes, it is. And I haven't put my kids to bed.
Oh my gosh.
So, yikes, guys.
Wow. Okay. I think we might have to stop with that one. There's so many. What were the jurors' reactions today? Miss Kitty, I mentioned their reactions earlier. They were really tuned in, although by the afternoon, it was Friday. It's Mother's Day weekend. I think they were tired. I think everyone in the courtroom was tired. And but just a quick one. Was Judge Boyce the same judge that would have issued or signed off on the warrants back when Lori and Chad were being served? No. That starts off in the magistrate court, which is the lower court. And this is a district judge. So in Hawaii, it was a Hawaii judge that got it. In Utah, when they exhumed Tammy's body, it was a Utah judge. Whatever jurisdiction the warrant's going to be served in, you have to go through that jurisdiction. You have to go through that court. So Judge Boyce wouldn't have signed off on the warrants. Okay, I think we're good. There's a lot. Someone asked about that raccoon. We talked about that yesterday. If I want to attend the trial, what time should I be there? I always say get there between 7:15, 7:45-ish.
Has it been full to the point that people can't get in? Or
no, it's never been completely full as far as I know. But if you're 1 minute late, you won't get in till a break. You have to wait out in the hallway. And that's happened with some people. I do want to shout out real quick our Australian friends who I met today. They came from Australia and they actually lived they're from
in Queensland,
from the Sunshine Coast.
Nate used to live there.
It's Carolyn and John, Kaz and John, and they're going to be in Idaho Falls tomorrow, so we're going to go say hello to them. They brought me Australian chocolates.
That's the best.
Thank you all. Another week, week 5 done. We're home.
So we're only 5 weeks. Are you counting that? There was also a juror week, right?
Right. Maybe it was. I think with the jury it was
It
6.
seems like a lot longer.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay.
With the jury, yeah.
Thank you.
I've been gone 6 weeks. 5.
I'm accounting for all the time.
Right. Thank you for being here. No Courtroom Insider tomorrow. It's Saturday. Go enjoy your evening. You can get caught up on all the testimony that you may have missed this week. We're putting them up witness by witness. We'll have up today's by tomorrow. And then we'll be back here Sunday night, 6:30 Mountain Time, to discuss what we didn't get to tonight and to preview what's ahead with the week ahead. Don't you think Erica should be a permanent co-host?
I'm a little busy, guys. I'm sorry. But I'm not just a bad mom. We're going to see if we can see the Northern Lights. So check that out if you can tonight. I hear that as southern as Alabama, you may be able to see Northern Lights tonight. So it was a clear day, and I'm hoping for the best.
It was a great day, beautiful day here and in Boise. All right, honey, take us out. Hit intro, even though it's the outro. Have a good weekend.
Okay, bye.
And then hit cut.